Hi, my name is Tasso Comenescu and welcome to Elite Guitarist. Today I'll be teaching you a study for classical guitar by the great Italian composer Matteo Carcassi. This study is in A major and it's number 3 out of a set of 25. Part of the essential developmental studies of any serious classical guitar student, this particular study is great for ascending arpeggio patterns. That's where you have your right hand and you're starting on your thumb and you're going up the strings, thumb, index, middle, ring finger, or PIMA as we say. And it's particularly good for developing the A finger for melodic purposes, bringing out the melody, so on and so forth. And you can practice this study a number of ways. You can practice with prepared strokes, where you have your hand planted on the strings like this in preparation to play the strings. Or you can practice without any preparation like this, letting the strings ring into themselves. Another focus of this piece is the suspensions in the melody and the counterpoint in the bass. So I'll be pointing those out as we go through it, and also giving you some of the harmonic outline of the piece and some other tips on phrasing and whatnot. And if you're watching this video on any of our social platforms, please visit eliteguitarist.com to check out additional tutorials, the rest of this, and a bunch of other guitar goodies as well. So here we go, part 1 of Carcassi 3 in A major, okay? And this first part is bar 1 through bar 8. It's broken up into 2 phrases, and then there's a repeat sign. And once we get through that, I'll give you some ideas interpretively for what you can do on the repeat. Something that's a recurring theme throughout this piece is the idea of using suspensions in the melody. And this is a term that means you're creating tension by prolonging a certain note under an underlying harmony, creating some dissonance and then resolving it with some consonants. So in measure 1, we have a 6-5 suspension. You're taking an A major chord, which would normally sound like this, and you're adding an F sharp at the start, which is the 6th above the root, and then you're resolving it to the 5. Okay, so that's what a 6-5 suspension sounds like, okay? So there's a little bit of dissonance that resolves right there, or consonants depending on your harmonic preference. And then we have this recurring right hand pattern, P-I-M-A-I-M-A-I-M, P-I-M. And it's in triplet 4/4 times, so 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3. So when you're starting to work on this piece, I highly recommend you practice that pattern by itself with sequential planting. Notice how I'm preparing the stroke each time versus no planting. So you want to be comfortable both ways in case you want certain notes to ring, and if you're playing faster, planting also really helps you out. Okay, so here we go. Phrase number 1, bar 1, we're playing an A major chord to start. You want to start with your right hand, regardless of what technique you're going to practice, planted, ready to go at the start of the piece. Thumb on the 5th string, I am an A on strings 3 through 1. And our left hand, we have our first finger on the A at the 2nd fret of the G string, and our 2nd finger on the C sharp, which is the 2nd fret of the B string, and our 3rd finger on the 2nd fret of the high E string, playing that F sharp. Okay, so this is bar 1. Okay, and we have that 6 resolving to 5 suspension. So you might want to accent that a little bit and then resolve it. Okay, and now we're going into bar 2, which is the same right hand pattern, P-I-M-A, I-M-A, I-M, P-I-M. And this is a 5/7 chord, or an E7 chord in the key of A, in first inversion because G sharp is in the bass. And this is at the 4th fret of the low E string. And this is a 9/8 suspension because we're 9 above the root there and then resolving to the root. Okay, so 9 to 8 suspension. And we're doing P-I-M-A, same start, same pattern. G sharp, 4th fret of the low E string, B at the 4th fret of the G string, D with our 2nd finger at the 3rd fret of the B string, and F sharp again at the 2nd fret of the high E string. And then let go of that 1st finger for the suspension. And you can also plant your thumb on the 5th string there if you want additional security. Okay? And this is going into bar 3, which is also a 5-7 chord, in this case E7, in root position this time. And you'll see in the score it says 3rd position, meaning you're at the 3rd fret of the guitar here. We have a low E, B at the 4th fret of the 3rd string, D at the 2nd string 3rd fret with your 1st finger, and then A at the 5th fret of the high E string with your 4th finger. And this is a 4-3 suspension. 4 above the root and then to the 3rd. And then bar 4, we're going to take our middle finger on our left hand and use it as a guide finger up to the 6th fret and play a low A, open, while muting the back of the low E, so that's not ringing through there. Okay, it's a dampening technique. And you'll see that slash line there next to the 2 in the score, and that indicates the guide finger there. Okay, so A, C sharp at the 6th fret, half bar with our index finger on the left hand, grabbing that E at the 2nd string, and then B at the 7th fret of the high E string. This is creating another 9-8 suspension. Again, all the same right hand pattern. And that concludes the first phrase in part 1. So here we go from the beginning. Bar 2, bar 3, bar 4. It's nice to add some vibrato there too, and you can think of it as just A back to E7 in that first phrase, okay? So the second phrase of part 1 starts on bar 5. You're coming out of the 5th position here. You want to slide that bar down from the 5th fret to the 2nd fret, okay? That's the seilla, which means bar in Spanish. That's why there's a C there. And you're starting on an open A, and then A and C sharp within the bar, and then G sharp with your pinky at the 4th fret of the high E string, creating another 7-6 suspension. And then right before beat 4, you're going to let go of that bar and shift to the 2nd finger on the A and the 3rd finger on the C sharp, because you're preparing for measure 6 here. Okay? And measure 6 is an A sharp diminished chord. This is 7 of the 5 of 5 here, which is the B7 that's coming up. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. And you'll see a sforzando there under the A sharp, so you want to play that either with a rest stroke or a little stronger with your thumb, emphasizing the dissonance here. Okay, this is the start of bar 6, A sharp at the 1st fret of the low A string, A sharp at the 1st fret of the A string, open G, C sharp, which you've had down, and then F sharp on top, creating another 6-5 suspension. And then in bar 7, we're going to move our 1st finger over 1 fret, collapse a bar, so a 5-6 bar at the 2nd fret, B, F sharp with our 3rd finger at the 4th fret of the D string, A within the bar, and then E on the 2nd string 5th fret, creating a 4-3 suspension within the 5 of 5 chord, the B7 here, and then going into an E major chord in root position in bar 8. Okay? Now, because the arpeggio pattern shifts from the top 3 strings to strings 4 through 2, sometimes you can use your thumb here on the inner note if you want a different sound on the bass strings, or you can use PIMA again. Hear the difference. Hear that scratch a little bit versus. So it depends on your preference. You if you're recording this piece or want to perform it, maybe you use the thumb. If you're looking at it purely from a technical perspective, you want to keep the pattern the same, use your eye finger. It's up to you. It's one of my favorite parts there, and you'll see the decrescendo in the melody throughout this first part because you're suspending and then resolving. And then there's no suspension for the first time in the piece in bar 8. Okay, so this is phrase number 2 in part 1, starting on bar 5. There's a rest there, and then you go back to the beginning, bar 1, okay? And on the repeat, I like to start ponticello, meaning moving your right hand towards the bridge, getting a more nasally bright tone, and throwing a slight fermata on that first note, allowing my hand to get into position. And I keep this color the same through the first phrase, and then in bar 5 I go back to a warmer sound. And then in bar 7 here, I really like to emphasize this chord the second time around. So you notice that sometimes I like to pause on the B here, depending on how I feel, but definitely on the E at the 5th fret. I do a little slice technique where you relax your wrist, caress the string, add some vibrato, and then resolve it. And you'll notice too that in bar 6 there's a sforzando, and then a piano in bar 8. So you're really resolving things here. And that concludes the first part of the piece, or bars 1 through 8.